Greetings and welcome to this commented time-lapse of the Greenwich school corridor, crafted in Blender and rendered in the real-time renderer EVEE. In this video, you will see my whole process, thoughts and techniques to achieve this piece. I hope you learn a thing or two, so let's jump right into it. So first things first, I'm starting out with a corridor shape. That's just a box that I extrude, and I'm using a human reference to scale my things into my level to get a perspective of the scale. Putting in some doors. Those are the main shapes of my level. Oh, stick, six, and a hammer right here. Now I'm trying to make some handles, but these are just details and I don't want to get into this at this stage. Putting in some pillars, some columns that I'm placing against the wall, and you can see that I'm using an array modifier as much as possible because instancing my geometries is a great way to change my design really quickly. Here I append a locker mesh that I did from an earlier project. Again, instancing my doors, so any change are easy to make. A small bench. Placing a blocking for my heaters. I begin to refine the shapes of my wall. I'm placing some delimitation. I don't know what those shapes are called, but they were really present in the reference. By the way, always have your references at hand. I had some using Pure Ref, a free software to display your references, and I had a screenshot of the school from the Silent Hill game, the PS1 version, of course. Blocking in some window shapes here at the top of my walls. You see, I'm making some changes into my design, and every changes are easy to make because everything is instanced and it's really quick to do. Here a trash can, a bin for the trash, but I ended up using another mesh later, you will see. Constantly moving my human reference to get a real feel for the scale. Now I'm trying to put some edge loops against the walls to carve my doors into the walls, so it's not I don't want to make it feel like the doors are just put against the wall. They are supposed to be in them, you know, when you open the door you go through them. Beveling some edges. Always bevel your edge, but you're not really supposed to make it at this stage. Right here I'm just having fun. Now I'm blocking in some lights. So now I'm using the LookDev EVEE real-time renderer to place in my lights. And right now I'm just having fun, and I didn't kept those lights into the final product. Placing in again some meshes from neon lights that I did for an earlier project, and to my second monitor I also have my references and a lot of assets that I did from earlier projects, so it's really quick to block out your levels with shapes. Here a water dispenser. Moving on to some more lighting. Oh yes, and that's the start of the final product. I wanted the character was handling a flashlight through the corridor, so now I'm making a camera, and the light, it's a spotlight that is parented to the camera, so I don't have to worry about moving the light with the camera. I just have to animate the camera over here and the lights will just follow. Now I'm animating the path. So I don't use any spline to make the path, I just go good old-fashioned animation, and at this stage I just want to have a good timing, a good rhythm, good flow for the whole animation. I just want some key moments, and I'm not refining too much the busy curves. I'm blocking in the final shot. I want the character to lean into the final to the wall, and there I know that I want to put some kind of creature to have a jump scare right at the end. Now I'm satisfied with my movements, and you can see that in my curves I'm putting in some noise. This procedural noise helps to give organic movement, some jittering, some more randomness into the movement, just like a real character will have in real life. And you see, it's all procedural, and you don't have to worry about not going too crazy on this, of course, but noises really helps to sell the movement that you want to convey. Now here I'm animating individually the light to make it look like the character is actually handling from side to the other, and is trying to focus on some things. He's turning it around and, you know, looking at things just like a real human would do. Oh, okay. Appending the creature. That's a model that I did again at in a earlier project. So I've placed it as a placeholder over here. Tweaking the light a bit. I want a good fall off. I want to be the surrounding pretty much bright near the camera, but I want the end of the corridor to be really dark, so I don't know what's really coming. I don't want the spectator to know, the viewer to know what's coming in, you know. I'm dealing in the temperature, the color of the light. And you can see now that I'm starting my Da Vinci project. I'm starting my montage. I want to remain iterative most of the time. I want to make the whole pipeline one time, have a first pass of the montage, and then refine over it. So you can see I'm rendering out even gray with no colors, no shading, just to have a feel of the pace of the whole project of the animation. So that way it's easier to predict the final output. I'm feeling pretty confident about the end of the project, so now I'm putting a second modeling pass on my assets. So you can see the eater, what I've done, again, making an array from that mesh. I'm instancing everything. Oh, a water fountain that in the end I just scrapped, because why do we need a water fountain when you have a dispenser over here? Putting in the clock. Fire extinguisher. And by the way, all these small assets, those small props, really sell the thing, because your surrounding, if you walk into a school, there is a lot of details that maybe you are missing. So adding all those subtle little mesh will bring you a lot farther. Some piece of a magazine, I don't know. Oh, some here I'm placing billboards, papers, and I will be placing later some pieces of paper on the floor right here. Again, to sell that look of people who were walking down these corridors. Now I'm refining my moldings and putting them at the bottom, right on the floor. And I'm trying now to block out the shapes in front of the creature, because it was still empty. Okay, now here I'm to the texture stage. I am having some references that I'm color picking to have the correct colors. And here I'm making an atlas, which is a large textures with all the texture that I will need for my whole environment. So that first piece was for the floor, and that second one, I guess it's for the walls. That would be for the bench. And you can see that I'm only taking a default brush for some kind of a painty roll paint feeling, and I'm very loose. I don't care about the details, because nobody cares, honestly. blocking some colors for the billboard, and as soon as it is done, I'm bringing it into Blender and I'm starting to place my shapes over it, placing the colors for the locker. Even though the texture is not finished, I want to get, again, I want to be iterative as much as possible, and you will see that later I will render again the whole sequence, get it into DaVinci Resolve, and iteratively it's again, I cannot stress this enough, but it's so much easier to predict the final result when you go through the whole pipeline again and again and refining every step of the way. So now again, I'm placing the floor. So that's a basic tile of the floor, and then I'm instancing from the x-axis and the y, and that way it's really easy to modify. Placing the walls, and for the UVs, I don't worry about any perfect unwraps. I don't care, honestly. I'm just making a project from view, box mapping, and I'm getting all the faces that I need into the square of the atlas that I need, and that's all. I don't worry about anything else. Everything that is outside the camera, I don't care. You see, the scene is taking to start to look to something. I'm having fun here with the post-process effects, getting some bloom going on, and here I'm adding a principal volume to have some kind of fog, some kind of I don't know, not dust, but density inside the scene. And by the way, having fog into all your scenes is a great way to glue everything together, just like the bass will glue everything inside a music mix. Now that I've added some fog, I'm trying to dial in some ambient occlusion, and now I'm rendering again the sequence and putting it again inside DaVinci to see what's going on and how's it look. I'm starting to block out some final grading with some LUTs readily available inside DaVinci, and here I'm just having fun really. I was experimenting with the lens flare, but in the end I didn't use it. I'm grading my dark tones and my mids. I just want to see what's the correct hues, the correct values that I should use. And now I move on to rig the creature. Now the creature is not in T-pose, so this is really less than ideal to rig, but hey, whatever, I guess. In the end, it was worth it. So I rigged it, even though it was a really unorthodox pose, but anyway. Here I'm trying to get a rig set up. I'm replacing my placeholder with the correct mesh, the rigged mesh. And now I will, I think that I will, block out my main poses of the creature. You can see the skinning is really weird, but again, I won't care. I know that in the end I will have the correct poses that I need. I don't worry about any details at this stage. I just want the main poses, and I'm already starting to put noises inside the from the controllers of the rig from my creature to have that jittery effect that the Silent Hill creatures a lot of the time have. The same effect that you can see in I think Jacob's Ladder, and having noise inside those controllers will really sell that effect. So I'm going a bit crazy over here, but I'm just having fun really, so you cannot blame me, I guess. Yeah, I'm working on the legs, I'm working on the spine, and I'm working on the hips. I want a lot of movement on all the creature. I want to make it look natural, and when you're natural, all your body is supposed to move. You don't have static pieces of your body. So I've been rendering it out and now refining. I'm refining again my models. You can see I'm back at the modeling stage. I'm adding details to the paper and going back into texture. I will move on to make a metal texture for all my metallic props. Oh, this texture is used for the heater. And I'm painting lighter values to simulate edge wear, just like people would lean against some surfaces, and with the time, surfaces would look duller, more softer color, just like was some kind of damage from friction over time. I'm placing the pieces over parts of the texture that are lighter, again to simulate that edge wear. Placing the moldings on the wall color that will be used for the ceiling. That's a bit with the water tank. You see, I'm very loose. I don't care about any details. I just want to be quick. I want to move on to something else. That's a piece for the window. Finding the light, and again going back to texture, and I'm all over the place, but as soon as I'm getting bored of what I do, I just move on to another step. So I try to enjoy the most of what I can of my project. Rendering a sequence again. Now moving on to some details. There's posters on the wall, so I grab images from Google. I don't really care what is written on them. I just want some kind of a 90s style, 85, and just a typical poster that we could find in a school. Now, I don't mind what's written on them, because in the end we won't be able to see what's written, because you see I use filters to blur out some oil paint filters to grunge out my texture to make it look like it comes from a PS1 games, where the textures are all JPEG artifact and you can't really see anything. You see, it's faster to lay out my textures, since a lot of the paper were instanced, so the work is getting just faster. Jamming in the magazine, again some posters. And I don't want to get too crazy with the details, because I know that in the end, it won't matter. Speakers for the ceiling, the lights for the security lights. Neon light that I've ended up using, I think the ceiling texture, really, I don't care. We don't see that much the ceiling fixtures, so whatever. Extinguisher, and I'm altering the colors, and I did that for the poster as well, because I want all the colors in the texture atlas as a whole to fit together. I don't want some too saturated red, some blue that don't fit in that palette, so I'm trying to get that homogeneity all over the color of my textures. By the way, I don't think we will see any of this, but for the shader, there is no roughness, no specularity or normal maps. It's only a diffuse map of the texture atlas, and that's all. Here I've created an empty to have the focus for my depth of field. So this will simulate the point of interest of the character, of what it is looking right now. I've opened the door right here to make it look like there is a classroom at the other side. Oh, and now, okay, now I'm making the color for my creature. So I'm using texture painting. I've did a quick and dirty unwrap of my creature, I don't mind. And I'm putting just some shades, creature shades on the creature, and I'm going fast as I can. I don't want to get caught into details because it's really easy to do so. I'm using noises, procedural noises, a default one from Blender, and I'm using them as textures and as mask to add randomness and more of a organic feel to my creature. Painting a bit more details on the face, but not that much. Now I'm going back into the camera view and I'm painting the seams, and that's all. I don't mind the other side of the creature because it won't be seen anyway, so nobody cares. I'm trying to block in some kind of an eyeball, but in the end I don't think it was a good purpose for the creature, so I ended up just removing it. I'm refining the poses as I'm going. Yeah, I want to make that face. I want to see I want the viewer to get a glimpse of the creature and make it look like it is startled to be seen. And now I'm blocking in with the camera movement a bit of a runaway, like the character is startled and it is afraid, it wants to get out. I didn't plan to make this at first, but it's just some kind of a happy accident that in the end I thought it would be really cool to have, and it was really fast to do. Going back into textures, and now I'm adding another pass of details. Now I'm adding some darker hues and lighter ones. Just again, I want to simulate wear and tears, and having some dirt at the bottom of my walls like this. So I'm putting some faces at the bottom into the darker shades. That way I can simulate some dirt going on. I'm taking this side of the wall, putting it into the lighter shades. Again, I want to simulate that wear. I'm refining. Now I can use some more textured brush. Again, all default from Krita, and with that you can get a lot farther. From now on, honestly, it's just polishing. Overall, the project as itself is pretty much complete. Now I'm just adding more polish. For the door, I've exported the UV layout of the shape of the mesh, so now I can paint over it and make actual door details over it. Again, being very loose, I don't want to lose any time making details. I'm using the side of the windows at the top over my texture, my door texture, so that way is really easy to go fast and reuse everything that you've done, so you save a lot of time. Here I'm taking care of the floor, so in the end it's a floor planking, and I'm doing the planks right now. I'm making the basic shapes, I've exported it, and now I'm getting into Blender just to see if everything is going on. I've noticed that the thing was not really tiling, so here I'm taking care of that. So no apparent seams are getting the attention of the viewer away. Right, so now I see that it's pretty good, and I'm confident to move on to go further into the floor texture. So now I'm painting in some more hues and some lighter shades, and make it look like more actual wood, I would say. Cracks, lighter shades to simulate volume. Now I'm doing the same with the lockers. I'm exporting some kind of a mesh layout to see how things are laid out inside Blender, and I will paint over it, knowing that some details will go there, and here's some ventilation for the doors of my lockers. I refresh inside Blender. I know the placement is good, so I can now move on with some more details, now that I don't have to worry too much about anything else. Large brush to make some dirt, some edge wear, some rust perhaps. And I'm going back and forth, create a Blender to see if the placement of my main details are apparent. I always ask myself, is it worth it? And if it's worth it, I go on. Going back to the walls, I'm refining again. The columns are always instance, so every changes are easy to make. Placing some posters on the locker. Working on the grading. And from now on, just refining. I'm just refining. I want to get it done now. I want to get it done. Now I will create a particle volume that will be used to simulate dust inside in the air, just like any Silent Hill would have. We have a lot of ashes flying through the air, and I'm doing it using a volume with a particle emitter. I'm using a translucent shader with a bit of emissive, and I'm using just a pentagon faced, just a mesh to make the particles like that, just a small cap. That's the shader. Here I'm experimenting with different style of shaders to get the best results. And I think I've ended up using only a diffuse and messing around with the alpha inside the render setting of EVEE. I'm trying to place here a turbulence, just a turbulent force to add noises to the behavior of my particles to make it look like more natural. I'm baking my simulation when I'm happy, so I don't have to simulate physics when I render out any images. Here, what I'm doing is doing an ambient occlusion pass that I will composite over on the top of my final image to have more contact shadows and darker areas around corners. I'm using the compositor from DaVinci. That is doing a pretty good job, I have to say. Now you see, as I'm messing with it, the effect it has on my final output. You can see the darker areas. Now I'm having a bit of film grain to add a bit of cinematic look. Fixing some stretching issues. I'm polishing my textures and all. Adding a corridor outside the double door here. Putting in a table, a desk inside the classroom to make it look like there's something in there. Here I'm painting a dirt map. It's just a tileable dirt map that I will use to overlay over my atlas. I'm using an ambient occlusion to mask out my dirt map, and that way I'm simulating some just overall dust and dirt and some kind of rusty, Silent Hilly textures around all my colors. The final touches here, I'm putting filter overall, oil paint, some JPEG artifacts to sell out that the PlayStation 1 look. Pixelizing. JPEG artifact. And now I'm starting to put in some sound. I'm making a basic sound design, overlaying some sound over one another. I'm trying to have the right balance of a volume and of a crescendo of when the viewer will encounter the creature. I'm tweaking the ins and out of my sounds. I don't want to have any clicks. And here it's the final touch. I'm making an hand-drawn effect of an animation of my signature. So I'm making 12 frames of the signature to have that hand-drawn animation effect. I was going back and forth in Krita and DaVinci because I wasn't really sure of the frame rate that I needed for that animation, but in the end I needed 12. Set, of course, at 12 frames per second. Adjusting my ins and my outs. And I'm rendering the final output. So that was about it, guys. I hope you had fun. I hope it was interesting, that you learned a thing or two. And of course, I guess we will see each other really soon for another project, and I guess another making of / time lapse of the whole process. And until then, take care, of course, and have fun.